Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up.
I don't know that it necessarily goes a long way to removing a fractured parliament.
Vanuatu's referendum results are out, but will this make any difference? Also,
we thought this was a fantastic opportunity to provide some safe spaces.
Pacific men open up about their mental health journey, and we see the return of the Micronesian Games. An expert in Vanuatu politics says the country's proposed constitutional amendments will only partly address the chronic political instability they're being brought in to curb. The legislation, which has been passed by Parliament and approved in a national referendum, just needs to be gazetted to come into effect. 17A states if an MP leaves a political party or is ejected from a party, their seat is automatically vacated. And 17B effectively removes independent MPs and single MP parties from Parliament. Pacific Hub project lead at Griffith Asia Institute, Tess Newton-Kane, says what the laws do not address is the fractured nature of Vanuatu politics. She spoke with Koroi Hawkins, who began by asking her what she thought of the referendum result.
Yeah, I mean, obviously both of the questions were voted for in the affirmative, and they were solid majorities, about 59% for 17A, 57% for 17B. So they were clear majorities. We weren't looking at kind of like 52-48 or anything like that, like we've seen in other places. But obviously there were patches of stronger sentiment, as you say. Some islands voted very much, overwhelmingly in support of some things, and other islands voted overwhelmingly against one or other of the questions. So definitely a range of responses across the voting public as a whole.
What happens now?
So obviously the first thing that happens is that the legislation that was passed at the end of last year needs to be gazetted in order to bring it into force. And that will be, that's usually that is a function of the Prime Minister. Will request that legislation be gazetted. I can't see any reason why there would need to be a particular delay around that. And then that sort of gives effect to the constitutional amendment. 17A, in theory, I guess, can start applying straight away as soon as that legislation's gazetted, although there'll probably be something of a transition period while the political parties get themselves organised so that they are in compliance with the legislation governing registration of political parties and what needs to be in place for their kind of architecture and governance. 17B, which is the one that says that if you're elected as an independent, you have to align with the party within 3 months or your seat is vacated. My understanding, or kind of my Bush lawyer's interpretation of that, is that it won't apply until after the next elections, which are scheduled for 2026. I also think it's quite possible that one may find itself subject to one or more constitutional challenges in the courts. It's quite a serious constraint on the overall suffrage in Vanuatu, that you can't sit as an independent MP in the Parliament, that you are constrained, that you are somehow going to be coerced into joining a political party or aligning with a political party, even if you have severe, significant policy differences and there isn't a party with whom you feel your policy positions align. Is the kind of like the theoretical constraint there. And I don't know of any other country that says you can't sit as an independent, any other democratic country. I certainly don't know of one in the Pacific that says that.
On the intended impact of this whole exercise is to reduce the political instability that we've seen quite pronounced in recent years with the multiple changes in leadership. Is it going to have that effect in your view?
I think it goes some way to addressing that issue. Obviously, I think, if you look at currently in the Vanuatu Parliament, there are 9 people who sit. 1 sits as an independent and that 8 sit as micro parties, so parties that only have 1 member. So, if we kind of assume that they will, as things currently stand, they can hold quite a significant sway in a parliament of only 52. We should expect that to change over time, given these changes. And obviously, it means that we won't have what we've seen before, where we've got members supposedly of the same party but sitting on different sides of the House. That will not be in a position, and that will go somewhere to making coalitions a little bit stronger. But I don't know that it necessarily goes a long way to removing a fractured parliament that means that we're always relying on coalition government. So that would kind of be something that aims at that, something that takes aim at that will probably have a bigger impact on political stability. So I think it's going to have some effect, but it's largely tinkering at the edges with the machinery rather than addressing some of the core issues.
And these core issues, I guess, relate to the caliber of leadership, right? And the I'm not sure what the right word is, but if the human beings are going to be moving around, they will find a way to manipulate any system, right? In terms of Melanesian politics.
That's right. So it's kind of I think there's a couple of things. One is around the way the electoral system is set up and the use of multi-member seats, which actually disincentivizes parties, like people staying in large parties and trying to have like national campaigns. The multi-member seat system actually kind of creates a bit of a driver towards this fractured nature of the parliament. But I think even more fundamental than that is your point, Karoy, which is you've got, rather than worrying about what the machine does, you've got to look at what the raw product is that's going into the machine. And how can the entire kind of bedrock of citizenship and civic education and understanding of the democratic bargain, how can that be built up and developed so that the people that are going into this machine are the ones that have the right sort of vision for Vanuatu and can be trusted to take on real leadership that's about national betterment rather than what we see at the moment, which is very typical in Melanesia, which is more about resource gathering and redistribution.
Men are being encouraged to normalise talking about their emotions with a special month dedicated to their well-being. In New Zealand, this week puts the men in mental health, with 7 days dedicated to shifting culture and mindsets on the issue that plagues the male population. 1 in 8 men will experience serious depression during their lifetime. Men are also 3 times more likely to commit suicide than women. They're also less likely to ask for help when they really need it. Alicia Foon has more.
Dietrich Suakai grew up in spaces where men hardly talked about their emotions. But it was during his time working in youth and community development where he discovered how crucial it was for people to acknowledge and prioritise their mental health, especially men.
I think there's this idea that for some reason our mental health and our emotional health are 2 different compartments, but actually they're 2 in the same. And I think the more that men become more comfortable talking about how they're feeling and actually starting off with acknowledging and recognizing what they're feeling, then, that puts us in a better place to actually have more meaningful and robust discussions.
Suakai found an outlet almost a decade ago, which kicked off his own mental health journey.
I actually got into a thing called spoken word poetry around 2010, 2011. For me, that was the doorway into beginning to explore my emotions and how I feel about things.
Events have been set up across New Zealand in the hopes other men will also embark on their own journey of healing and learning to express their emotions. Pasifika Medical Association alongside Etu Pasifika are leading some of these events in Auckland and Christchurch. PMA Chief Executive Debbie Sorensen says it's about creating safe spaces for men to open up.
We thought this was a fantastic opportunity for Pacific men to come together. This is the 2nd year that they have actually run this event, and it's great to see them doing it themselves in the way that they know that works. The golf event is one. They've got a quiz evening. They've got walking group. They have talks with psychiatrists, health coaches, counsellors, just a variety of events, all of which will suit someone somewhere.
Expressing and talking about feelings or even asking for help is something Tongan GP Dr. Francis Katoa wants to be normalised.
Pacific mental health for men, they do experience worse health outcomes, and our clinic is trying to address this by providing a culturally specific service.
He hopes this week inspires men to take action.
Pacific men, they're the strong, hard-working type. In Pacific culture, there's the cultural and religious explanations for mental health. And I think this is at times a barrier for our men seeking help.
He says there's no shame in seeking support through a GP or counselling, something Soakai has found to be transformative. But there are other options.
If counselling is outside of one's budget or not too confident in talking to someone in that way, then fortunately you've got other avenues like Inner Boy, which is a really great free app that people can access, where it sort of talks through the journey of one's inner world and how to talk and process that stuff.
He says being real about his feelings has been a game changer for his relationships.
There's nothing better than being able to test the strength of a relationship or a friendship than being able to really allow that person into your inner world and begin to share how you're actually feeling about something. And man, how incredible would it be if you didn't need to do that under the influence of anything? You know, that you didn't need to wait until you got intoxicated or what have you to begin to feel courageous enough to tell the people that you care about how you're feeling about a thing.
If you are in Aotearoa and you or anyone you know needs support, you can free text or call 1737. Or for men looking for free counselling, go to innerboy.nz.
Traditional leaders from across the Pacific have met during FESPAC to sign a declaration solidifying their commitment to strengthen relationships and share knowledge on how to collectively face challenges confronting Pacific people. In March, a catalyst for the regathering of traditional Pacific leaders occurred in Fiji, when the nation's Great Council of Chiefs met after a 16-year hiatus. Leaders held a ceremony to formally honour the ali'i and to celebrate the connection of culture. Tiana Haxton was there.
A historic meeting of traditional leaders has been a poignant moment at the 50th anniversary of the Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture. The Tūramariki Declaration signing saw leaders promising to utilise Indigenous traditional knowledge to lead the way forward in communities. The word Tūrama sheds a light on ancestral wisdom guiding the journey ahead. FESPAC Director Dr. Aaron Sala says it's a historic event for the region.
The end goal for this series of engagements was to just find a way to bring traditional leaders together in Talanoa. Dynamic, challenging, but casual conversation around the issues that are confronting us as Pacific Islanders. Like economic development, health, social welfare, and how do we consider them from a traditional perspective, from a traditional mindset.
The purpose of Pacific traditional leaders has been to bolster regional unity and cooperation, address shared challenges like climate change and sustainable development. Meanwhile, Aotearoa has offered to lead the way forward and plan further events. Gira Simmons, the Kingitanga's Chief of Staff, says the declaration formalises relationships between traditional leaders across the region.
In recent months, there's been a lot more focus and attention on the establishment of a declaration that gives life to a forum that unites traditional leaders. We firmly believe that traditional leaders have a different focus that's a bit more long-term and focused on different issues, and we want to celebrate that and connect them across the ocean.
Simmons says this has been a long time coming. He says it is a significant step in the right direction for Kiingi Tuheitia, the New Zealand Māori king.
This year the King's been on a journey of kotahitanga, how we can unify our people, and that's really important for us. What took place today is the next step in that journey, and it all relates back to what we're doing at our home, what you're doing at your home, and what our brothers and sisters across the Pacific are doing in their homes.
The inaugural Pacific Traditional Leaders Forum was held at the Riolani Palace, coinciding on King Kamehameha Day. King Kamehameha III was known for establishing diplomatic relationships with Pacific monarchs during his reign.
The 10th Micronesian Games will begin in Machuro, the Marshall Islands, on June 15th. Close to 1,000 athletes and officials are expected to participate at the week-long event, which is making a return since 2018. Joining me is our senior sports journalist, Eliesa Tora.
Bula Eliesa, the Games was originally scheduled for 2022. What happened and why was that postponed to 2024?
Yes, the Games were initially scheduled for July 25 to August 5th, 2022, but that was delayed by a year because of the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was moved to July 2023. But then again, the Micronesian Games Council decided at a special meeting on May 2nd last year to move the event to June this year. So those were the two factors that affected the Games being held in 2022 as was initially scheduled. And now things are on track, and athletes and officials are looking forward to meeting up in Majuro this weekend.
Tell me, Eliesa, who topped the medal tally at the 2018 Games?
Well, Palau dominated the 2018 Games in Yap, where a total of 10 countries participated. They claim a total of 32 gold medals to top the tally after the competition. Marshall Islands, who are hosting the event this year, finished the 2018 meet with 29 gold, tied with Guam. So there was strong competition there. And Pohnpei was on fourth position with 18 gold medals, while Northern Marianas claimed 9 gold medals. Those were the top 5 countries that won medals at the Games and topped the competition back in 2018.
And what countries are participating at this year's Games?
Countries that are participating this year are the hosts, the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, Nauru, Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, Guam, and Northern Marianas. There are indications that there will be between at least 1,500 to 2,000 athletes, coaches, and officials at the Games, which is the first to be hosted by the Marshall Islands since 1969. So a big contingent going into the Games with the countries that are also participating.
Are there updates on how the different teams are shaping up?
Yes, news coming from the different national associations in Micronesia during the week indicates there is a lot of excitement building as athletes prepare for the Games. Teams from around Micronesia are already making their way to Majuro for the opening ceremonies this weekend. Most of the countries had athletes competing at various regional and international sports meets over the last 6 years, since 2018, which included at the Pacific Games, the Commonwealth Games, and the respective Oceania meets, Oceania Athletics, Oceania Boxing, Oceania Weightlifting, Powerlifting, and all these events, swimming. Last week, a number of athletes took part at the Oceania Athletic Championships in Suva, while weightlifters competed at the elite competition in Australia. So interesting to see that because of the delays, athletes continue to participate in the different regional and international events. Northern Marianas are sending 115 athletes and officials to the Games. Team Palau are also sending about the same numbers to the Games, and they'll be competing in different events with volleyball, beach volleyball, swimming, wrestling, weightlifting, basketball, softball, tennis, and wrestling, with athletics, of course, being the major sports that will have teams competing in over the next week.
And who are some of the athletes that are tipped to win medals at the Games?
Palau are saying that two of the athletes that competed at the Oceania Athletics Championships in Suva last week are favorites on the track. Craven Gikolei and Peace Adaba. NMI have Theodore Rogers in the men's 100 meters and Casey Cruz and Sarine Sapong in the women's 100 as well. Long distance runner Tanya Ten, who also impressed at the Oceania Championship last week, and at the Pacific Games in the Solomons, is also one of the favorites for the team. Guam are saying they have their own teams, game fishing, they have basketball, they have swimming, who they believe should be raking in gold medals when the competition gets underway. Most of these athletes have had, as I said earlier, have had the opportunity to compete at different meets. So they have been consistent, and they will be going into the Micronesian Games set to win medals for their respective teams.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tofa Soifua.